Hey everyone, welcome back to the Talking North podcast. Hope you're all doing well. Just want to start off with some recent North Melbourne news. Our star midfielder Finn O'Sullivan has turned down a 8-year $15 million contract from Tasmania to stay at North till at least the end of 2029. Absolutely fabulous news. I think it had been rumoured over the last 6 months or so that Tasmania were keen on Finn O'Sullivan, and why wouldn't they be, right? He's an absolute star in the making. So to see that he's committed to us past the point where they're going to be entering the league is so good to see, and I think it's a credit to Clarko and the club for making us a stable place to be and an enjoyable place to play footy. And I think since he's joined the club, we've had more success than maybe some of our other younger players who had some really tough years to start. You know, he's won 8 games this year, 5 games last year. I think we've done enough in these 2 years for Finn O'Sullivan to want to stay, and I think the relationships he's built at the club, on the field, off the field, clearly has led to his decision to stay at North Melbourne, and I think it's amazing. I think the next player we need to get back on board is Charlie Comben. I think he's such a crucial part of our team, and there are Tasmania links. So if we can sign him long term, I think he's the last one we need to prove that this core of players is here to stay beyond Tassie's entry to the AFL. But yeah, I thought I'd just start off with that. So upcoming game, St Kilda. This is a huge clash. We sit 13th. They sit 11th or 10th, I believe. So we're two of the teams in that logjam in the middle of the ladder who, could finish 10th. So Giants, us, Carlton and St Kilda are all on 32 points from 10th to 13th place. So we're all in it. We're all in it to make wildcard, and I think this is our last chance to maybe give ourselves a chance. Obviously, we have an extremely hard run after this game, but this is a must-win in my opinion. Not just to be able to make wildcard, because that is unrealistic, I'd say, with our upcoming games against the Dogs, Hawks, Cats and Swans. But I'd say for our own sake, and I think to feel like we've taken an extra step this year, I think the 9-win mark is really important. I think a lot of people, such as myself, predicted around 8 wins. So to get a 9th win here, one, gives us belief that we can attack these last 4 games against top teams to really see if we can pull off an upset or two to maybe make wildcard, but also I think for the sake of proving to ourselves and others that we can beat teams above us and teams around us, because this year we've only beaten the teams below us, and our last 3 losses against Melbourne, Collingwood and Port have proved the outside world correct that we can only beat the bad teams. So I think this is such a huge clash. We haven't beaten St Kilda since 2020, which is kind of crazy because St Kilda haven't been a great team since 2020. They've made finals a few times, but it really shows how much we've struggled the last few years that we haven't even really gotten close, except last year's 9-point loss in round 21 is the closest we've been since 2020 to beating them. And I think they're a beatable team. I think their game against Geelong last week was really important for them because a lot of people thought they could actually pull off an upset, win their first ever game, or maybe in their first game down in Geelong in an extremely long time. And they weren't up for the test, and Geelong were much better. I think outside of Rowan Marshall, I don't think the Saints were good at all against Geelong. I think the 27-point margin was generous to them. Obviously, Geelong is such a good team, and I don't think the fact that they lost to Geelong means that Saints are bad. But I think if they'd won that game, I'd be a lot more worried going into this one. So Sunday, 3:15, back on the Sunday time slot. Happy to see it. I love playing on Sundays. I don't care what people say. Marvel Stadium is a ground that suits both teams really well. We're 6-2 at Marvel Stadium this year. We suffered our second loss at the stadium this season against the D's last weekend. So we have a good record at Marvel. They also have a good record at Marvel. So I think it'll be an open game. In the past, games between us have been low scoring, North Melbourne and St Kilda, but I think this year both both teams have expanded on their offensive abilities a bit more. Saints probably more so that they've actually become quite a high-scoring attacking team. And I think that could suit us, the open style of game. There's a few worries I have about the Saints. I think first off, Naz, he's an absolute star, obviously, and I think if you don't tag him, I think he takes games away from teams. I remember last year when we played them, he got 36 touches, around 10 clearances, and I think he was the difference in a close game. So whether that is Sullivan tagging him, whether that's Jai Simpkin, I think we need to hone in on Naz trying to stop his game as much as possible. You look at the job that Ocean Mullen did on Naz last week. He did really well, kept him to only around 20 touches. Obviously, we don't have a tagger of Mullen's capabilities, but I think Finn O'Sullivan or Jai Simpkin can play on him and impact his game slightly. But the thing with that is that the Saints do have some other really good midfielders. Max Hall, Hugo Garcia showing some really good signs this year. Darcy Wilson, who's been linked to us heavily throughout this year. So they have good players outside of Naz, but I think if we can stop Naz, I think our other midfielders can beat their other midfielders. But I think if Naz gets off the chain, I think it'll be a long day for us. Another one is the return of Max King. So Max King hasn't played in the AFL I don't think he's played an AFL game in 2 years. And there's a high chance that he makes his return game against us, which is crazy to think. He had 1 game or 2 games back in the VFL this year and redid his hamstring, or did his hamstring. I think he had knee issues before that. So the return of Max King could be interesting, and it would be a new-look Saints team for the first time in a few years. So we could be coming up against a different Saints team than we've seen all year. I don't think Max King necessarily will take the game away from us. I think that'll be hard for him to do in his first game back. But it definitely changes the structure in their forward line. Makes them a bit taller, and it gives them a key pillar to target. So that will be an interesting watch to see who goes to him. I'd say Core goes to him. Core did a good job on his brother Ben King when we played the Suns. So the return of Max King could make this game different, and I'm interested to see. I'm pretty sure he will be playing. I'm interested to see how the matchups work there. And then I think despite the Saints being good offensively this year, I think their backline is definitely hard to break down. I think Callum Wilkie and Jack Sinclair are genuinely 2 of the best in terms of, I think, key defender partnerships this year. I think Silvani's made his way into this team really nice. He's gelled really nicely in this St Kilda backline. And Cal Wilkie's just quality. I think rarely gets beaten, really good ball user, finds it easily. So I think their backline's going to be hard to break down, and I think our main issue for most of this season, especially in the last month or so, is our connection between our midfield and our forward line. You look at our entries against Melbourne, I think we had around 6 more inside 50s, but Melbourne had 6 more shots than us. So I think that says a lot about our ability to find targets on inside 50, and I think it's becoming a huge issue, and I'm not sure if they're working on it at training or not, but I think when the ball's around that 75 to 60 metre range, we panic. We're either trying to go too long, and they can easily clear it through for a rush behind, or we're trying to go too short, and in that danger area in the middle of the 50 that can easily be turned over back the other way for our opponents. And I think there's a few ways we can stop that. There's more, we can be more composed going inside 50. But if we do get to a point where the team does clean up the ball in our forward line and wants to transition, I think we've been way too tall in our forward line in the last few weeks. We've been playing Whitlock, Darling, Larkey and Trembath as 4 key forwards, which is just way too tall. So to discuss the team changes now, I think Whitlock has to go. Unfortunately, I think he was pretty poor against Collingwood. Yeah, he kicked a goal, but he doesn't quite have that confidence yet to leap at the footy and find the right spots. He's jumping at the ball way too early or way too late, and it's not helping our forward line at all. I think we need to genuinely bring a small forward in for Whitlock, just change the dynamic up there. Because I think the weeks and the games in which our forward line worked best, Jacob Constanti was playing. So I would like to see Jacob Constanti come in for Whitlock. He's a great pressure forward. Yes, he doesn't impact on the scoreboard as much as we want, but I feel like before he got dropped or managed or whatever, he actually had some really good weeks. So I think Constanti has to come back in. He had a good game in the VFL. I think he kicked 3 or 4 goals. So did Doveston, but I don't think Doveston's quite ready. So I'd like to see Constanti come in for Whitlock. And then on the injury front, there's a few players under injury cloud. So in the VFL, where Zane Dersma had a pretty poor game, only got 3 or 4 touches and no goals, just not great for a player that we'd like to see in our first. He's done his shoulder, so he'll be going in for surgery, whether that's 1 week, whether that's the whole season. I think there's a high possibility that Dersma won't play an AFL game again this year, which is definitely going to be an interesting story with him out of contract at the end of the year. But that's a discussion for another time. So yeah, Dersma definitely won't be coming in this week. But the other player under an injury cloud is Luke McDonald. He's facing a fitness test. Whether or not he passes, as a possibility, he comes out. And I think with Blamires coming back from his concussion protocols, I think he comes straight back in for McDonald. And you can rearrange things a little bit. You can go Scott, Blamires, Stevens as our 3 wingers. You can push Goda back into where McDonald's playing. Hardiman can also play on the wing as well. So I think Blamires and McDonald works. We have players that can play off the half-back and on the wings. So, yeah, if I had to predict, or what I probably want from our 2 changes would be Blamires in for McDonald and Constanti in for Whitlock. I know there were some players that weren't quite on their game against Melbourne, but I don't think we need to make any dramatic changes. So, yeah, I would just go for those 2 changes. How we can win this game. I think this is an interesting... I think there's definitely facets of the game where we are better than the Saints. I think at clearance, we're a more dominant clearance team. I think our midfield overall is stronger. Obviously, Naz is a star, but I think Saints, despite having some really talented youngsters, I think we are more impactful and can get higher volume inside 50. But that hasn't been our issue all year. We often win the inside 50 count. It's about conversion. And I think another reason that we could get when this game is the do-or-die nature of the game. Because you look at it, and our season's done if we lose. Saints' season is probably not done if they lose because of their run home. But obviously they'll be desperate to win to, help their chances to make wildcard. So I think the do-or-die nature, whether that suits us or them more, I think hopefully there's a little bit of motivation after a 3-game losing streak. And I think 3 games that we would have fancied ourselves to win as well. If we'd won those 3 games, we would be comfortably in the wild card and we'd be talking very differently about this game. But I think because both teams are, at that 8-win mark, both on the, edge of the wild card, I think it's a do or die game. And I hope that suits us more. I hope we rise to the occasion. If you look at it, it's 2 pretty young teams, so there's going to be a lot of players wanting to prove a point, a lot of players wanting to show not just their team, not just their opponents, but the wider AFL world that they can perform in bigger games such as this. And I know it's, people say it's North Melbourne and St Kilda on a Sunday, but it is a big game in terms of the implications for the rest of the season. It's, both teams' most important games to date. And obviously, that's probably obvious saying, each game throughout the year gets more important. But I think, in particular, the positions of both these teams, it's an 8-point game, right? You're either a game ahead of your opponent or a game behind at the end of the game. So I think it's a huge game, and I really, really hope we can show up. But that we definitely have to play better than we did against Melbourne. And as good as that first quarter was against Melbourne, is that sustainable throughout a whole game? Clearly not. We haven't really been able to play that forward clearance game for 4 quarters because it's, takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of, pace and, commitment to what we want to do. So I think a sustained game style with a combination of fast ball movement but also slowing down the game is really important. And I think both teams will look to do that throughout the whole game. So I think it's going to be a really interesting clash. I think it'll probably be one of the better games of the round, not in terms of maybe the quality of both teams, but in terms of the similarity in quality and how important the game is for both clubs. So if I had to give a prediction, I've tipped us the last few weeks wrongly, but I'm going to have to do it again. I think it's going to be decided by under a goal, and I think we'll win by, I'm going to say 3 points. I think it'll be extremely close, and I think with the last few weeks and our inability to finish off games or show up in the important moments, I'm hoping we've learnt lessons from that, particularly the Collingwood game, and I really hope we can get over the line in a tight game, and I think we will have to win it. I don't think either team will win by a comfortable margin. So yeah, I think we'll get the job done by under a goal, but it's going to be extremely close. But yeah, thank you guys for listening. Good luck. Hopefully we get it done, because it's huge and it'll be so disappointing if we don't. But the hope that we'll have after we win will be something to savour, and I think will give us confidence going into those last 4 games against top teams. But thank you guys for watching, and hopefully the Roo boys get the job done.